With all respect to Bill, of course.
I love Bill, you know, and he loved that antenna, but and then I'm not an enemy of the antenna either. I've been able to work 160 from that shack, but guess what? I can work 160 from the fan dipole too. So we're just going to put up a regular dipole. I think just a simple dipole, inverted V.
Yeah, that'll work.
You're dirt tootin'.
I'm hoping to get a NFED half wave up
Nice.
soon, but
Steve swears by it. He likes his X beam, but he loves that NFED that he's got. Steve, KCUNSA.
yeah, well, I built a couple of the transformers, and I don't know if I just can't figure out how to measure them properly or what. But anyway, I think the only thing to do is build the antenna, and I finally found out the wire that I want to use for it is finally on the way. Oh God, it's trying to get anything is.
Oh, supply chain dynamics.
Yeah,
I feel your pain, buddy. 100%.
Wire and coax and power poles and this and that and the other kind of thing, and it's well, they just pushed our date back 2 more weeks, and
Hey John, what wire are you using? What's the specs on the wire?
18 gauge poly stealth. I believe it's copper clad steel. You know, I could really use anything. God knows I got
Copper clad steel.
A little bit of wire hanging around, but
Is the copper clad steel stranded or solid?
Stranded. So it's a good choice, and it's I want it to be a little bit harder to see than not. So
yeah, that's what my NI4L OCFs are. The black stealth, stranded.
yeah.
Why are you going 18 gauge? That seems awfully small. Why not 14?
I could. It's just it's not small at all. It'll probably handle a kilowatt, no problem. And I don't own an amp, and I don't ever plan on owning an amp, really. Although I could change my mind tomorrow on that, but I always figure power is no substitute for operating skill. So,
well, I'm just trying to learn a little bit here too. So that's why I'm
it's a balance between strength and durability and anything. I mean, I have plenty of 14 gauge hard drawn, and I could put that up too. But
how high off the ground are you going to get it?
I don't know. I got to figure out. I have. It's going to go at the shop, and I have. I don't have a lot of real choices for how I can mount it and put it up without getting into more negotiations with the landlord, which I'd rather not get into if I don't have to. So, so it's going to be all the recommendations that I've been doing some research on it, and most of the recommendations are keep the end close to the ground, the feed end, keep that close to the ground. So, I'll see what I can manage. It's not going to be great. I know that going in. I know it's not going to be great, but and I know they're not great antennas, but also first thing I learned in antenna school was some antenna beats no antenna.
Well, John, you know, I bought that 200 feet of coax from you, right?
So
For the flex.
I'm sorry, what was that, Paul?
I said, I bought the 200 feet of coax from you from the flex, and
Yeah.
my antenna is 100 feet away from the house. And it's 45 feet up, and I have two OCFs. The one that's far away has a hell of a lot less noise on it than the one that's closer to the house. So that really worked out well.
Good.
And that OCF is up 45 feet and the ends are up 20 feet on pulleys. So it's
Well,
held up there.
Well, I gotta string something up. I'm tired of not having something up outside, so we'll string something up. But anyway, we're well into time here, so let's there we go. All right, I'll stop babbling and let Ant take over. Thanks for doing this, Ant.
Yeah, and you got the floor. Everyone, this is Ant LeFebvre. He's NU1U, and he's got a presentation on DigiMode FT8 tonight. So Ant, up to you. You are co-host, as you now know, as you are to James.
Ruby, take it away, Ant.
Great. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks, guys, for letting me present at your TechNet here. When I was asked to present, I thought of different ideas, and FT8 was the one that I finally came up with. I think that there's a lot of guys that already know FT8, but as far as some of the folks that might not know it, I'm hoping that I can give them an overview of what FT8 is, and maybe for the guys that have played with FT8, I give you a little bit more technical background as to why you would use FT8, what situations you could use FT8 in, and then maybe just show you how I run FT8, and then that might give you some ideas that will help you guys out when you're using FT8. So to start with, before we even get into what FT8 is, I show this meme, which is FT8 isn't real amateur radio, changed my mind. One thing that I have come across with ham radio is that there's two things that ham radio operators will argue over. If a Baofeng radio is a radio that you should be using, or if FT8 is real amateur radio. If you're here and you've already made up your mind that FT8 is not real amateur radio, and I cannot change your mind on that, you might want to skip this one. But if you're here to listen and you want to maybe expand your thoughts on what FT8 is and why you would want to use it, and that it actually is a mode that can be used in certain situations where you might not be able to make a contact otherwise, FT8 can be fun. And not only can it be fun, but it can be useful as far as trying to, again, make that contact that you probably couldn't have made before. So hopefully in this presentation, I'm able to change your mind. If you know nothing about FT8, then don't believe the folks that say that FT8 isn't real amateur radio. Whatever you find fun in this hobby, do. I mean, people argue over sports. They argue baseball is boring or football's boring, soccer's not a real sport. If you like it, do it. Okay. So hopefully if you watch this presentation and you like what you see, you try it out. And if you're doing FT8 and you love it, keep on doing it. FT8's exchange in a nutshell. Okay. So so we'll start with FT8 in general. What is FT8? FT8 is you using your radio with a computer to send a digital signal that's going to be encoded and sent over the airwaves via audio. The other side is going to take that audio, feed it into a computer, and it's going to decode the audio, and that's going to be the code that comes out and the program that's decoding and encoding it to make a contact. The exchange with FT8 is going to be a transmission from one station calling CQ, a transmission from another station answering that CQ, reception reports, and then a final 73 thanks for making the contact. So if we go down through this FT8 exchange, it's not unlike a voice exchange. You're going to start with a CQ from a station. So in this situation, there was a station calling CQ W0QU from Grid Square Echo Mike 48, and it happens to be in North America. I respond to that station with a W0QU NU1U. I am in Grid Square Fox November 31. He will respond NU1U. This is WOQU. I'm receiving you at plus 11 dB. And then I'm going to respond with, I got it. That's that R there. I got you at negative 03. So we've sent our invoice equivalent to 5.9 or 4.8 or whatever you want to be, or in CW 5.99. This is how it's sent in FT8. And then, okay, we sent our reception report received 73. And then, okay, he got the report, we're good, 73. That's an FT8 exchange. Each one of these lines here is 15 seconds worth of transmission time. So one station will be transmitting for 15 seconds, next station will transmit for 15 seconds, and so on. It'll make more sense when I show you in the demo. Any questions so far? All right. What I did was I went and found a whole bunch of websites that I was going to use to throw in bits and pieces to my presentation. And then I said, you know what? I'm not going to try and rip out certain pieces of their website and put it into slides. I'm just going to show the slides on the presentation and go to these websites so that we can actually walk through some of the information that these websites have. So starting with the first one, Basics Explained, a breakdown of the exchange and the program to operate it. Moving on over. This first website gives you FT8 basics, and what I had just explained there for a typical conversation, it's laid out right here. It also tells you that WSJTX is the most common program used for FT8. And this is what a waterfall looks like on FT8 on that program. So each one of these lines here and each one of these little segments is an FT8 transmission that your computer is decoding or potentially decoding. This is the audio in a visual form on a waterfall. These chunks are going to be in every 15 seconds, like I said before, and this is what the band activity looks like. Down here, FT8 handles weak signals very well, so you can run at low wattage and make far contacts. Now, FT8 is considered a weak signal mode, not a low power mode. People confuse that sometimes. You do not need to run FT8 at low power. You can run FT8 at whatever your legal sending limit is on the band. It's considered a weak signal mode because if you are receiving a signal, it can pull a very weak signal out of the noise. So there's the difference between low power and weak signal. So you can run, if your rig can do 100 watts, you can run full 100 watts and try and go as far as you can. And another station, if they're pretty far out there on the reach of your station and it's a weak signal, they'll be able to pick it out up to negative 20 dB under the noise. The next one here, FT8 digital amateur radio. There's a primer on why you would use FT8. And then it's also got the explanation of the grid tracker and the WSJTX companion app. So, whoops, getting ahead of myself here. Why would you want to use FT8? Whoops, let's see, can I make this bigger? Where's Zoom? Usually I just click on it and I can hit control and it'll zoom. 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 There we go. Okay. Stop moving around like that. FT8, why are some reasons why you would use them? This author makes a long list of reasons why you would use FT8. But really, a lot of the reasons why you would use FT8 is because the bands are kind of difficult. Right now, the sunspot cycle or the sun cycle is pretty bad if you're doing HF and you're trying to reach far away with limited wattage. Using voice, I can get some stations in Europe sometimes. With FT8, I've been able to hit Japan. I've been able to hit Hawaii. I've been able to hit Antarctica. Those are things that I wouldn't be able to do on voice, not in this sun cycle. Another thing that you can do is you can work UHF and VHF stations. So if you're trying to get your VUCC award, VHF, UHF Century Club award, and you got to get 100 grid squares on voice, might be challenging. With FT8, it's a little bit less challenging because you can get out farther. Not so much that you can get out farther, but again, it's a weak signal mode. So when you're transmitting, you're able to reach stations further away because they're able to decode your weak signal versus trying to pick you out in voice. It's a lot like CW. CW can go out a lot farther because you can hear that signal in the noise, and also bandwidth is a whole lot less. So when you're transmitting on voice, you have that 2.83 kilohertz bandwidth that you're sending out. So you're splitting 100 watts across that whole bandwidth. Whereas with FT8 and CW, it's a very small amount of bandwidth that you're using to push that 100 watts out. You're able to send with more power in that limited amount of bandwidth. So this site gives you a whole bunch of information for why you would want to use FT8. Another thing is 6 meter. So when 6 meter band opens, I've been on Twitter and I've seen folks saying 6 meters is open. Everybody that I see that's on 6 meter is running FT8 or FT4. And you can tell because they're showing on PSK Reporter, which I'll show you later, where their signal is actually going. Okay, moving back to this here. How does it work? This website here gives some stats halfway through the blog that I thought were pretty interesting. So this is the information on this website, which is each message is 15 seconds in length. And the messages are transmitted via fixed time slots that make decoding easier. The fixed time slots is important. So with FT8, in order to decode a signal, your time on your computer needs to be spot on. You need to be synced with an NTP server, or by some miracle, your clock time is exact and it's the same as everybody else's clock. If your clock time is off by a second, a few seconds, you won't decode anything with WSJTX. You won't see anything with FT8. Time is very important with that application in order to catch any decodes. So if you do set up WSJTX and you want to run FT8, making sure that you have your computer set to internet time, anything that's synced with NTP, that's important. The message length here, error correction is involved. The frequency modulation, tone space is 6.25 hertz. So that's that bandwidth that I was talking about. The whole bandwidth on the amount of bandwidth that's being used is 50 hertz for each band that you're running FT8 on. So you can run FT8 on 160, 80, 40, 20, 17, any of the bands that is running FT8, you got a 15 hertz bandwidth where you can have people running FT8 and decoding in parallel. And I'll show you what that looks like. The decoding limit is 20 dB, and you can possibly do this automated. With WSJTX, it's semi-automated. You still have to click on things, but the QSO will automatically complete if you just let it run. I think I also want to show on this website the difference between FT4 and FT8. So if you hear that folks are running FT8 versus FT4 or FT4 versus FT8, these are the reasons why. They're both very, very similar. In fact, the exchange is identical. FT8 is more popular. The reason why it's more popular is because normally if you're on and there's a stable band, so if you're just running on 20 meters and you want to make some QSOs, you don't really care about how stable the band is because it's going to be there. Usually it doesn't just disappear on you. And the cycles are 15 seconds long, so they're longer than FT4. The full QSO will take a minute because it's 4 exchanges before you make the QSO. Below 15 dB, the QSOs take a little while, but it's good for contacts around negative 20 dB, negative 20 decibel. So it is best to work weak signal on a stable band. FT4 is for contesting and for stronger signals on an unstable band. So we're talking 6 meter. 6 meter will show up and then it'll disappear. So you want to make as many contacts as possible in that time frame. So FT4 is probably a little bit of a better option for you because it only takes 30 seconds. It takes half the time to make a QSO. Now you can't decode as weak of a signal. You're going to only be able to go down to negative 17 dB, which is about half as far because every 3B is a power level half. So negative 17 dB is going to be the level of which you can decode. So it's faster, which allows you to do stronger weak signal work on an unstable band. Again, 6 meters is a good one, and then satellites is another one. So I run FT4 on satellites because the satellite's coming by. You only got a certain amount of time to make a QSO, and there's only a certain amount of time on some satellites where you can really make a QSO because you can actually hear the satellite. AO109 was just opened up for folks to make QSOs, and they recommend 2 modes that you can use, CW and FT4, because they're highly efficient, and the satellite is hurting right now.
Comment?
Oh, go ahead.
Thanks, Ann. I just wanted to make a statement about power density. So when you're trying to work with, let's say, a 3K signal or bandwidth on sideband, there's not a lot of power density there. Your wattage is expended across 3K of bandwidth, whereas the FT modes, the power density is much, much greater because your bandwidth is a lot smaller. And likewise even for FM, we had the pretty good example this last weekend when there was 3 guys out there doing POTA work in 2 different parks, and we couldn't hear each other on I believe it was 6 meters. It was very noisy and sideband wasn't working, and someone suggested FM, so we went to FM, which has a greater power density. We were able to make a contact like lickety split. So the reason that that's really efficient that way is because the FT modes have a very, very small or very, very narrow bandwidth that they're occupying, and the power density is greater. It's enhanced.
Airflow.
Yep, Rob's 100% correct. That's one of the reasons why you'd want to use it. Just like CW, you're putting a lot of power into a very small bandwidth. Does anybody else have any questions? All right. So last website that I was going to send everybody to is a Wikipedia-like article on FT8. It gives a lot of stats about FT8 and how it works, what frequencies are used for FT8. They're all over here, as well as a whole bunch of information, controversy, that thing I was talking about where folks don't consider it real radio. They consider it cheating, but do what you like. I think FT8 has been great. I've made a whole bunch of contacts on FT8, and you know, the solar cycle is not not what it could be, and it's exciting when you're making contacts from across the planet. Moving on, how do I connect to my radio? I've shown a couple of radios here. This one is my POTUS station, and this one is my home rig. So we have an IC706, MK2. There's actually a G in there for mine. And then there's the IC7300. It's the same basic principle with the two of these. You need a computer. So how do you connect radio to computer? You need to be able to do a couple of things. You need to be able to get the audio from the rig to the computer, and you need to be able to control push to talk, because you're going to be transmitting. So when your computer is encoding and sending, you need to be able to key up the push to talk. With the IC7300, it's a single cable. It's just a USB cable. It has the audio drivers built into it. It's got all of everything you need straight through this USB cable. You can do everything. With the IC706 and some other radios, you need something in the middle. A signal link is what I use. So you need to connect the computer to the signal link, and then the signal link to the radio in order to get the audio. That's how you feed the audio into the computer. Now to do the push to talk, we have a cat cable. So the cat cable connected to the IC706, it controls the cat. So the push to talk it controls, and it also controls the radio's frequency. So it can change the frequency for the radio. So that's how we do the audio connectivity over here. And then the push to talk and the cat control over here. So I've done a lot of talking about FT8, but really, I'm sure a lot of you guys are like, well, show me. I want to see FT8. So we've done all of the background of what FT8 is. Now I'm going to show you how you operate FT8. Let's see, move this guy over here. All right. Can I get a thumbs up confirmation? Everybody's seeing a world map with a whole bunch of lines and stuff. All right, great. Thanks, everybody. Okay, we got a lot going on over here. There's two programs running right now. We have WSJTX, which is that thing that I kept talking about. That's the thing that does the encoding, decoding, making the contacts, changing the radio frequencies, all of that stuff over here. What's over here, in my opinion, is invaluable. It's the Grid Tracker companion app to WSJTX. So if you install WSJTX, all you're going to get is this. And sometimes that's all you really need. When I work satellite work, I don't need Grid Tracker because I don't really care where people are. I'm just trying to encode and decode over here. But if you're running on HF, maybe you want to see where people are. Maybe you want to be able to keep track of where you've made contacts. It's really fun watching this war games like animation as people are making contacts. So going through both of these programs here, we'll start with WSJTX. And it looks like the waterfall just died on me. So let me close that and start it over. Okay.
Yeah, what do you mean it died on you, and why do you have to start it over? What happened there?
Because I'm running it on a Raspberry Pi, and it's an old Raspberry Pi, and it sometimes doesn't like being operated too long, so I have to reboot it or restart the program. If you're running this on Windows or your regular old laptop, you'll be good to go. So I'm running this on a Pi, and I could run it on my computer, but if I want to play FT8 and I'm not down here and I'm upstairs, I can just remote into my Raspberry Pi from my laptop,
Question, Ant.
Yeah, go
Grid
for it.
Tracker.
Does Grid Tracker work only on digital modes, or does it work for anything else?
I believe it's only digital modes.
Okay, thanks. Sounds useful, though.
It is. So even if you didn't want to run FT8, you could come over here, call CQ a couple times, see what the propagation looks like, and then go back to voice or CW. If you're not running Grid Tracker, but you're just running WSJ-TX, the website that it's pulling from is PSK Reporter info. So on this site, it's pretty cool because you can put in a call sign and then say what band you want to select, signals sent by the call sign NU1U, all modes last 15 minutes. So these are actually the modes that PSK Reporter will show. So any of the digital modes that are listed here, if there's a station that can hear you running that digital mode and they're reporting to this website, you'll hear them, or you'll see it on the map here. All these stations that have a 1 minute, 0 minute over here, these are all stations that heard me, and they should match up with what's shown on Grid Tracker. Let's see. So nobody's contacting me back. I can move over here, and I'll show you guys what it takes to set up WSJTX with your radio if you have a 7300 anyway. You go into settings, put in your call sign in your grid square. Then there's a whole bunch of check boxes. These check boxes, you can go to any website and it'll tell you which one to use. These are just the ones that I happen to use. This TX watchdog is important because if you're calling CQ, you don't want to call CQ forever. Or if you're trying to contact a station and they don't respond, after 6 minutes, it'll just stop. The program will say, you know what, I give up. I'm not going to keep doing this forever. So it's important to set this. If you crank this up really far, you can just keep on transmitting, and who knows, you're just transmitting to maybe somebody that's not even on the air anymore. I didn't realize that I turned off my video. Sorry, everybody. Next up, radio. So these are the settings for the ICOM 7300. It allows you to do cat control straight through the same interface as the audio that's coming in. So with a Raspberry Pi, there's USBs that you can set up here. With Windows, it'll be a COM port. And then over here on audio, for the Raspberry Pi, it's the system default card codec. For Windows, it'll be whatever it happens to be for the IC7300. Reporting. So this is where it's sending to that website, enable PSK reporter spotting. So if I turn this thing on, what's going to happen is instead of signals sent by the call sign NU1U, you're going to see call signs received by NU1U. So all of these guys are being reported by me as I can hear them. All these stations right here, which is important because it's the opposite of what you're seeing here. And if these stations didn't also participate with that checkbox, I wouldn't see it here. So it's very cool when folks are sharing information with this website because it gives you the ability to see what propagation is. Moving back here, let's click cancel. All right, so let's see if I can get a station. This one's pretty strong, K2FKM. So you see here that CQ came up, my green bar jumped over to where he is. So what's happening now is that I'm transmitting over here on this red bar, and I'm listening over here on this green bar. And that's where that guy is transmitting currently. This frequency is 1244, and this bar is set to 1244. I'm transmitting at 1602. This red bar is at 1602. All right, he can't hear me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to halt this TX, and I'm going to move on over to 40 meters. So how I moved over to 40 meters is all I did is I selected this drop-down menu over here. It automatically switched my radio to the correct frequency, and now it's decoding FT8 on 40 meters. And over here on Grid Tracker, you're going to see that all of a sudden these will start populating with 40 meter contacts versus 20 meter contacts. And over here on Grid Tracker also, you can see that it's showing what frequency I'm listening to. It shows FT8, and then it gives a whole bunch of stats over here. And see everything populated. It shows the band is 40 meters, 20 meters, so I don't want to click on anything 20 meters because I'm on 40 meters again. And let's see if we can make contact with somebody here on 40 meters. So I'll click on AC2SB. It got a nice strong signal. It shows the decibels over here, dB. So anything that's a positive is a really, really strong signal. And you can see down here, this red underneath the green bar, it's a very, very strong signal. So I'm calling that station up here. He's calling CQ. Let's see if he responds. And down here on the grid tracker, you can see this red line here. The reason why he's so strong is because it looks like he's up by Toronto. So it's a very straight shot. And it's starting to populate, showing where folks can hear me on 40 meter. Okay, we're making a contact. So this thing that turned red is that station calling me, giving me a reception report of +3. I'm giving him a reception report of +14. So those are both super strong signals, considering FT8 can decode down to -20. So we're making a contact right now. Right now we're receiving. I should see Roger 73, or sorry, report received 73. And then I'm going to send a 73 to them. This confirmation will pop up, and I'm going to click OK. It logs my contact into WSJTX, and Grid Tracker also logs the contact. Cool thing is that with Grid Tracker, you can set up integration with other logging programs, including Logbook of the World and QRZ. In order to do that, what you do is this gear box down here, you click on. In this logging tab here, out of all these tabs, for QRZ, you'd click on that. You'd put in your API key for your logbook. And I tested this before, so I wasn't going to show everybody what my logbook API key was. But if you have a logbook on QRZ, if you click on settings, there's going to be an API key. You need to be a premium member of QRZ in order to do this. It's $27, I think, for the year. So it's not a whole lot of money. It allows you to do FT8 logging automatically from the program. You copy this API key, you slap it in here, and anytime you make a contact, it'll automatically upload it to QRZ. So AC2SB, if we go back to my logbook here, it's already logged. And it's got a star, which means that the contact's confirmed. The other guy also did the same thing, confirmed it on QRZ. Now, with QRZ's logbook, you can export the log straight to the Logbook of the World. So once you've made a whole bunch of FT4 contacts, you do export to all the Logbook of the World. It'll send it over to Logbook of the World. You then import from Logbook of the World. You'll get a green star over here. Green circle star means that it's also confirmed on Logbook of the World. So it's really easy to log stuff with FT8 if you're using Grid Tracker, because you have that integration. Another thing that you can do is, if you're running any of these logging softwares, N1MM, Log for Old Men, N3FJP, etc., you can set up integration with that as well. So I have Amateur Contact Log, and I set up the integration. If I slide that screen over here, I set up a test logbook just to show you guys. It's in the log. So if I was keeping this as my regular logbook, it automatically sends all the information over there. The reception report, the contact, the frequency, the mode, band, comments, etc. So Grid Tracker is super cool. It's awesome to use with WSJTX. It allows you to do that window here that shows you the different stations that are calling CQ. And once you've already made a CQ with a guy, it won't show it again because you can select new call sign. The other thing that this allows you to do is, if you uncheck CQ only, you can see just stations that are out there, and you can click on them and try and make a contact even if they weren't calling CQ. So you can start calling to them, and if they respond, great, you've made a contact. Might be important if you're looking for that DX station from a country that you haven't made contact with yet. I'm going to pause and see if there's any questions right now.
Yeah, I have a question on, your radio is set to 7.074.
Mhm.
Could you explain the frequencies down on the bottom? It says you transmitted on 1602, you received on 1546.
Yeah, so these frequencies down here are within the bandwidth of the frequency that we're using. So with a voice contact, you're using 2.8 kilohertz. You're using the full 2.8 kilohertz. With FT8, you're getting a certain pass band. That's what we use in satellite terms. It's probably the same here. But you got a certain amount of frequency range that the program is listening on that you can use to encode and decode when you're on that frequency. Now, within that range, you're only using a fraction of that to actually transmit and receive. So even though I'm on 7074, I got, as this website states, we've got 50 hertz to use, and we're only using 6.25 hertz, I think. It's basically, you have this giant amount of bandwidth that you can use to listen on, and then you can use any of that to send or receive on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. And when you logged his contact, it showed 7.076. So I don't know. Was that what he maybe
Let's see.
program was a hair off, but I don't know. I guess that's not a big deal.
Can I make a comment, Ant?
Yeah, go for it.
I would explain it slightly different than you did.
Go for it.
Your frequency is 7074, is what the program sets. And the reason you see 2 is because when you transmit, you were transmitting on audio frequency around 1600 hertz. So that's actually 7074 plus 1600 hertz. And that's why you see that number. And receive was set at a different number. And that's why you see the 2, because when you transmit, it's actually the sum of essentially the carrier plus the audio. And when you receive, you're decoding the same way around.
Bart did a better job explaining it than I did.
Yeah, and
Yeah, go for it.
yeah, that 50 hertz, 6.25 hertz. I think in each 50 hertz, call it a channel, there's 8 tones that it cycles through that communicate to each other. And each of those tones occupies a 6.25 or 6.5 hertz, sub slot. So you might say every 50 hertz slot has 8 slots within it.
Okay. Yeah. So I was reading that and explaining that wrong. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. You guys did a better job explaining it than I did. But so you can kind of liken this to a waterfall on the 7300. So you can set the amount of the waterfall that you can see, and then you're going to tune to the actual frequency that you want to transmit and receive on. So if you're seeing a whole bunch of voice transmissions, you'll see a whole bunch of them on the waterfall, and that's what you're seeing here. But where you're actually sending and receiving, that's where you need to actually go to on the radio in order to transmit and receive.
Ant, if you recall, I think last May or so during this year's Contest University broadcast, they had one guy that gave a presentation on a new way to estimate propagation across the globe. And it relied on kind of what you were pointing out here, all this aggregated FT8 data can reveal, global, the maximum usable frequency, I think, around the whole world. And with that, he's able to kind of have very accurate precision in his estimates of propagation. And it was sort of similar to what you had, that you were showing here.
Yeah, so what Togi's talking about, and that was an excellent presentation, is it shows propagation. It'll show God, I forget the term for it, but it's essentially where the signal's bouncing off of the atmosphere. So maybe I'm bouncing off the atmosphere and coming back down, and these stations can hear me. And then it's going back up, and no station in this range here can hear me. It's coming back down off the atmosphere, and now a range of these stations can hear me. And then it's going back up and coming back down, and maybe stations here can hear me. So that talk, I'll try and send it out after this is over. It's a wonderful talk because it shows that using FT8 and FT4, you can kind of show world propagation depending on if you pick a station and then see where they're being heard. The other way to run on WSJTX that I was talking about with FT4, you just come up here, you click mode, and then select FT4. It's going to change the frequency over here, and it's going to instead now pick up FT4 signals, which are much quicker. You can see down here now where it was 15 seconds, it's only 7.5 seconds. So the transmit receive is very quick. And over here on Grid Tracker, you now see FT8 stations and you see FT4 stations. So there's a Spain station here that's neg 5 dB. I'll click on them and see if I can make a contact with them. Very quickly, it changed over to the correct frequency that he was transmitting on. I'm transmitting, seeing if we can make a contact here. And you can see on Grid Tracker, my attempt at trying to contact him is shown.
Don't you miss not hearing anything? It's just quiet.
Oh, I can turn it up if you guys want to hear it. Let's see. Oh, stand by. So that's not. I'm not catching it. I'm not catching him there. Let's try another station here. There's the FT4 stations. Wow, these stations are coming in strong. Dominican Republic. Anybody have any other questions while we're trying to make contact with the Dominican Republic?
Okay, well, I'll let you have a quick question. What are all those icons down the lower right?
A whole bunch of options for Grid Tracker. As far as how you want to show the visualizations down here or pulling in stuff from QRZ or Logbook of the World. So like, for instance, if we click on this guy here, we can toggle the Maidenhead width. If we scroll in, my Raspberry Pi is super slow. Come on. Come on. Okay, there we go. For instance, if I toggle this Maidenhead square, it's going to make the Maidenhead squares much bigger. Instead of whatever it was set to, I think it's, yeah. Trying to explain the difference here, and I'm not quite sure. It just makes it bigger and smaller. Another one here is showing the Earth's gray line. And of course, I made the contact. Click OK. Oh, that's toggling the moon. Anyway, yeah, these are a whole bunch of options. I don't really touch any of them except for this guy here, which is the settings option. And it pulls up the settings page. You can mess around with them. I never do. So one thing that I'm seeing here is someone's calling me. I'm gonna try and call them back. All you have to do is double click on their call sign here, the transmission. It'll automatically populate what it needs to populate over here in the standard messages and try and make a contact. And less busy station or less busy frequency. Let's see, was there anything else on the internet that I wanted to show you guys. I showed you PSK reporter. I showed you this thing in action. Oh, one thing that you're going to want to do if you're running FT8 or FT4 or anything is this hold transmit frequency is kind of important. The reason why you want to check this box is because if you don't check this hold transmit frequency, what's going to happen is if you're answering someone, WSJTX will automatically jump to their frequency. So I'm going to click OK on this station. I just made contact with them. If someone's calling CQ and I don't hold transmit frequency, let's see if I can show it here. Let's do EA5HTM. Watch my red bar here, the transmit frequency, jump. See how it jumped over here? And now the green and the red are right on top of each other? That's bad. The reason why that's bad is because the station that's calling, they found an empty frequency that hopefully they found an empty frequency that they can call on. Now, if a station responds to them on that same frequency by unchecking that box, another station might do the same thing. Maybe 3 stations might do the same thing. Maybe 5 stations might do the same thing if they're a really rare grid square or rare DX entity. And now if you have 5 stations that are using the same frequency to call back, it's just like having a pileup in a contest where you might not hear anybody. You have no clue. Like 6 stations came to you and you're like, I don't know. QRZ, call again. That's what's going to happen here if you uncheck that box. So what you want to do is you want to click hold TX frequency. You want to find a empty spot on the waterfall if you can. And then when you respond to somebody calling CQ, so I'll click on NB70, the receive is going to move, but your transmit's not going to move. So you're not going to be one of those stations that jumps onto the same frequency and potentially somebody will look at their waterfall and go, okay, I see that there's a station calling me back. Why is it not decoding? The reason why is because it's not one station calling you back. It's like 2, 3, 4, 5 stations calling you back. So if you set this thing to automatically respond to the first person calling in, its default is to automatically respond to somebody that's calling in on your frequency, which is okay. But if you uncheck this box and someone's calling you back when you're calling CQ, you have to manually select which station you're gonna call back to, which is sometimes good because then you don't have folks that are slamming down onto the same frequency as you.
And I have another question.
Go for it.
Can you show how you call somebody? You keep clicking over on Grid Tracker, but say I install WSJT and I don't have Grid Tracker. I'm just using WSJT.
Yep. So there's 2 ways that you can do it. You can look up here and see somebody calling CQ, and you can pick out the call sign. So let's say N4MF. You can type in N4MF, generate standard messages, click on this one here, and then click enable transmit. And now what's going to happen is I am going to call N4NF that's calling CQ, and hopefully I can make a contact with him. The other way to do it, I'll halt TX here. Let's pick a different station. So HA7TM, you just double click on them. Once you double click on them, it'll automatically enable the transmit and put the correct messages in here for you.
And a comment?
Go for it.
In your first method where you type in the call sign, you have to be cautious there to make sure that you're on either the even or odd time slot, depending upon who the station is. If you simply double click in your second example, it will automatically select the correct time slot.
Yep. So the reason why I mentioned that method is just because sometimes this band activity, it will be flying because there's so many different bands. but Bart's 100% correct. If you have this transmit even first, and it's transmitting at the same time as them, you might have to uncheck this. And this box here decides which time slot you're transmitting on if you don't do that double click. That double click will automatically set you to the right time slot to respond to the person.
But do you ever use a JT alert?
JT alert I don't use. I've used JS8 call, which is, let me close out of these guys here real quick. JS8 call is similar to, well, I think it uses the late night. JS8 call uses the FT8 protocol, I believe, to send messages that are longer than what you would use in WSJTX just to send a message back and forth. So with JS8 call, what you can do is you can actually send messages, longer messages, using the FT8 protocol, such that it's sort of like PSK 31, where you're sending messages back and forth. So JS8 call is pretty neat. You can actually upload a message saying that you're going to be at a POTUS station, or do a POTUS spot from JS8 call if you type in the message correctly, and there are stations that you can hit that are listening that are able to upload to the POTA app website. But this is another application that you can use that's very similar to WSJTX, just with longer messages.
No, actually, JT alert is a supplement to the other program. It identifies the station that you're talking to.
No, you can do that with Grid Tracker. Also, Grid Tracker will pop up a screen that'll show you who you're talking to. I just don't run it on my Raspberry Pi because, again, it's old and the horsepower is not so great. But you can do that with Grid Tracker also. So we're bumping up on an hour now. Want to be respectful of everyone's time. I think I showed everybody everything that I wanted to show them. But if you have any questions or you disagree with anything that I said, feel free to comment.
Ian,
Yeah.
is it possible to rag chew on FT8, or is that just not a thing?
It's not a thing. With FT8, it's you're making the contact. It's with JS8 call, you're using the FT8 protocol to rag chew. You can rag chew on JS8 call, but with WSJTX and FT8, you're just making contacts. That's it. Which is one of the reasons why some folks think that FT8 isn't real amateur radio, because you can't talk to somebody. But in reality, I mean, if you're doing a POTA activation, when you're out there or you're doing field day or whatever, you're not rag chewing with people. You're just exchanging reception reports and you made a contact. It's the same deal.
One more question now. Sorry, one more question. Do you have to preset all those the messages? You have to enter those in?
No,
the program does all that?
Program automatically does it for you. The only thing that you need to do is enter your call sign grid square in the settings menu. That's it.
Right. Okay.
So the question becomes, and I've got a question about that. Can you put some alternate message in your transmit protocol so that
yes,
a different message goes in there than the usual stuff that you're going to get with FT8 or FT4?
Yeah, let me share my screen.
You can. They have macros, but you're limited to 13 characters.
Right. Are you guys seeing my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So one thing that I've done before is just typed in and here Can't hear you. You can just do this. Click enable transmit, and you're going to see that this message is going to go out. So you can freeform whatever you want in here. It's just you don't normally do that. Usually FT8 and FT4 is meant to make contacts. But if you wanted to freeform, type whatever you want in here, you can.
So is not that I doubt Bart, but you're limited to 13 characters.
So it's within that time slot. So that time slot only allows you to send a certain amount of characters. If you
Sure.
wanted to, you could send number of characters, and then in the next, that's what JS8 call does. JS8 call will send number of characters, then in the next time slot, send the next number of characters, then the next time slot. So if you're using JS8 call versus WSJTX, you can do the freeform rag chew if you wanted to.
I wasn't aware of JS8 call. That's pretty cool. I'm glad for that, because a lot of people, like, if you're doing POTA, yeah, for POTA you don't really need a lot of extra. I wouldn't think that you need more than 13, but if you're exchanging, what they call brag on other digital modes, you might want something like that.
Let me see what the JS8 call frequency is, and I can just show you me sending a message out with JS8 call. JS8 call frequency is 70, 78. Okay, 70.078.
Is there a specific segment of the band that you have to use for FT8? Is it segmented out that way, or can you use any part of the band?
So you don't have to, but it's advised that you do. The reason why is because that's like the watering hole for everybody.
Right.
If you go and use it in some other part of the band, you're probably not going to see anybody, because everybody's congregating at that one spot that is designated as the FT8.
Yeah, if you're going to Pizza Wheel for your pizza, everybody's going to Pizza Wheel. You want to go to Pizza Wheel.
Exactly.
Is there a list of what these segments are on all the different bands somewhere?
Yes.
Yes. So one of those websites that I had showed it, but if you're using WSJTX, already programmed into the program. Let's see, general. Okay, so okay. And
And have you seen the Japanese stations coming up on different frequencies?
I don't see the Japanese stations on different frequencies.
I see them frequently on 7041.
Is that why I'm never seeing them?
Well, no, they're also on the standard frequencies, but for some reason I see them spotted on these other frequencies, and by golly, they are there.
Try. Okay, 7.
Well, you're a little hacker, you.
7078.
Always knew you were a hacker.
There's so many things over the years have not been real ham radio. Starting with continuous wave when the Smart Gap guys were around, and then they had that voice stuff on AM, and then single sideband was going to be the death of ham radio, and then 2-meter FM repeaters was going to be the death of ham radio, and
Hey, John.
Yeah.
John, leave it to the humans to pervert anything that comes across their purview.
Well, that's true. If you're having fun with radio, go for it.
Exactly.
So to show you guys JS8 call and that the thing you were talking about, can you send a longer message? I typed in a freeform message here, and I'm actually decoding a whole bunch of stations that are also doing JS8 call. It's the same deal. You can select a line on the waterfall where you want to transmit. This freeform message, it's going to take me 45 seconds to send. So if anybody's listening and they want to to respond to my message, they can, but I'm going to click send here, and you see down at the bottom, it's the 15 seconds that it's going to take. So it's red now. I'm transmitting this as a test message to show the club NU1U. It's now in its first 15 seconds.
And the last 15 seconds.
And then it's the second 15 seconds. And you can see sending timers counting down.
So it uses sequential segments.
It doesn't wait. It just sends because you're not doing that contact exchange anymore. You're just sending. So it sent, this is a test message, and then to show the club call NU, and then the last one was 1U.
Got to
And
be tough on the transmitter.
what's that?
Has to
Higher
be
duty
tough on the
cycle.
transmitter. It's 100% duty cycle.
Well, it's
Yeah.
a higher duty cycle, sure.
But this this is using FT8 to
Higher-
send
higher-
a longer message.
Higher power density, Bart.
Yeah.
I like higher power density.
How long you want to be key down?
I don't care. That's what I've got electronics for. If I need to repair it, I'll do that too. They have no issue.
I'm sorry.
So what I might be seeing over here actually, as I'm looking down at my radio, is I might be the program might actually be over into the FT8 segment, and it's catching some of the FT8 stuff, and it's decoding that, and that's why you're seeing some of this. But right here, this is definitely a JS8 call message because someone wrote out hearing you. Same thing with this. This isn't a standard FT8 message.
So someone typed that in, like, I'm hearing all these guys.
Yep.
Is that what I see here?
Yep.
Okay.
And you can click some of these guys down here. So like this guy's calling CQ, but you can click on different things, and there's macros that are saved that'll automatically type in messages. I don't know what those are. I've only played with this for maybe, I don't know, whole 2 or 3 hours tops.
I never knew this existed, so you're opening my mind.
Yeah, JS8 call is pretty darn cool. You can do APRS from this if you wanted to. I don't remember how, but you can do an APRS message from here. You can also, like I said, if you were out in the field and you didn't have internet connectivity and you want to spot yourself in POTA, you type in the POTA message exactly as they tell you to from the website so that it's formatted. And if another station that's running JS8 call hears you and is able to, it'll spot you on the POTA web page.
Very cool.
All right, guys. Anybody got any other questions or anything else?
Not for me. I don't see anything in the chat either.
Cool.
I've got from Don Gwynn, thanks, Ant. Good job.
No problem, Don. Thanks.
Thanks, Ant. Nice job.
Yeah,
Thanks,
fantastic. Opened my eyes.
Yeah, good job, Ann. Appreciate it very much.
No problem. Thanks, guys, for coming and listening.
Well, as always, this TechNet will be available on YouTube after probably 24 hours. I will send out a link to you, Ant, and to members at.
Okay.
Ann, are you gonna send a email to the reflector with all those links and that presentation as well?
Yeah, I'll send the presentation over to Rob, and he can forward it to you guys.
Thank you.
Roger that.
A good presentation. Appreciated it. Just a quick question. In an emergency situation, could you set this up to send like a recurring warning message or disaster information and repeat it automatically?
Yeah, so
Or is that something you wouldn't do with FT8?
you could there were some stations over in Europe that when COVID first started, you'd see on FT8, stay home, stay safe. Like that was just a message that you would always see, and Bart shaking his head because he's seen it too. Just like it was constantly, some station was, or many stations were sending that message out. And it's just something that you can see in your waterfall.
Some of the European stations actually got call signs that said things like that.
Really?
Yeah, you're
And
probably.
what message are they trying to send with that? What are they trying to tell us?
Encourage you to stay safe from COVID.
Warning, Will Robinson.
Oh,
Warning.
COVID.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
You're technically legally not supposed to do that, You're not supposed to be a broadcast station, but I don't think anybody's going to pinched for doing a PSA kind of announcement.
That's why they had their call, they got call signs to do that.
Well,
Call,
no,
it
I
was the
wasn't
call
speaking.
sign.
I wasn't speaking about call sign. I was speaking about a message.
Right.
But no one's going to pinch you for that. I seriously would doubt you would receive an NAL for that, something from the FCC. Nice present, Dan. Thank you.
Yeah,
I
no
gotta
problem.
run 7.3s. Thanks, Ant.
Not a problem. Just to show
Very
you guys,
interesting, Ant. Thank you.
and just to show you guys that are still here real quick, this is actually a QSO going on here. Name here is Mike, and they're making a QSO right here on JS8 call. So I'll go back to not sharing.
JS8 call. That's pretty cool.
Okay.
I'm very curious about your background, Ted. That does not look right.
Which background?
I don't know. There's one background, dude.
On my
World War II,
oh, that one.
the Three Amigos. You see it better when I get out of the way?
Doesn't look right with your
Oh,
head in the middle of it.
I quite
Yeah.
understand what's going on there.